Welcome to Sharp Football Analysis. Today, Freeman and I are going to discuss waiver wire running backs, Taysom Hill, and talk about quarterback and tight end streamers available for Week 17 of the fantasy football season. So make sure you stick around. What's up, everybody? My name is Raymond Summerlin, and I am joined, as I am every single week, by Freeman Smith, the creator of FAABLab, to talk about the biggest waiver ads of the week heading into the final week of the fantasy football season. How are we doing, Freeman?
Yeah, very good. We made it. Championship week. I think if you're listening to this, watching this, it means you probably made it as well. So it's a congratulatory atmosphere on the last episode of the podcast.
You know, it's funny, we record this, and I've mentioned this all year, we record this ahead of the Monday night game. So obviously if something happens on Monday night, God forbid something happens like Christian McCaffrey or something, that's why we won't talk about Brian Robinson Jr. But the other part of that is I have a semifinal game hanging in the balance still. So I don't know yet. So we're gonna see how that works out. What I will tell you is I currently have a brisket resting on my in a cooler on my kitchen counter. So after we get done with this, I will be going to slice up a brisket. So life's going to be good regardless of what happens in that game. But let's hope for not that many Brock Purdy and not that many Christian McCaffrey points. That's what we will be hoping for sure. What we're going to do today is going to be a little bit different. Going through a bunch of ads. It's the last week. It's a lot different. We're going to spend most of the time talking about quarterback streaming options, tight end streaming options, because those probably make the most sense and the most difference for anybody who's still playing now. That said, there are some running backs out there that we can talk about coming off of some injuries. Saw the injury to Quinshon Judkins, which was it's tough to see. And so we can talk about the Browns. We don't know what's going on with the Texans backfield, a lot there, but there also are just a lot of guys that are available. Like Michael Carter is still available in 61% of leagues. Emmanuel Wilson, that's an interesting situation we should probably talk about, available in 63.6%. Chris Rodriguez Jr., who we've talked about a lot on this show, available in 70.1%. Blake Corum's, again, 70.1%. Ramondre Stevenson is even available in 25% of leagues. And with the Patriots playing no, they're not playing. No, never mind. They're not playing. I thought they were playing on Saturday for some reason. But
no, they're an early game Sunday, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right. But either way, like with Henderson leaving with a concussion, we don't know when he's going to be back. So there are lots of options out there. Who's really standing out to you as we get, we kind of go through those kinds of running backs that have been available for a really long time. We can get to the Browns, we get to George Jordan in a second, but like the Michael Carter, the Emmanuel Wilson, that kind of group. Any of those stand out as like, I actually do feel comfortable with this guy in championship week.
Yeah, you mentioned Ramondre and how you're surprised he's still available. I feel like I'm less surprised than you just because I think a lot of people might have dropped him when Henderson emerged. And so a lot of times those rostership numbers are either inflated by dead leagues, right? But I feel like he might even be the opposite, where it's a case of the dead leagues aren't the ones that are dropping him. So I feel like there might be a chance he's available. And against the Jets, that's such an awesome matchup.
Absolute smash. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as just having a guy slide into your lineup that is really readily available, if Woody Marks didn't go, I think Jordan looked pretty good, super involved. Nick Chubb looked like total dust to me. And then, Blake Corum, he's probably not available, but he's been really solid, double-digit carries, double-digit fantasy points in the last 4 games. He's getting a touchdown on, I think, is it two games in a row rushing touchdown for Corum? And to me, he just looks good. I know he doesn't quite have the breakaway speed, but it seems like he's a little more.
But he has been. That's the thing, though. He's been, because you're right. And if you go back to his combine testing and all of that, but he has been the most, if you look at just backs that like qualify, he has been the most or like second most explosive running back in the league. If we measure explosives by like 10-yard carries, which is where my cutoff is for my little filter that I use. But Corum has been widely explosive this year, and it didn't work out this past week. They didn't have he got in the end zone and worked out from fantasy perspective, but they didn't have a ton of success on the ground. And the Falcons, that matchup is not great for them, even though I will say that the Cardinals had more success running than I expected them to
Yeah.
this past week. But the thing about Blake Corum was he got there last week because they just ran so many plays. Like they ran a ton of plays, and that allowed him to get there. But he was at a 37.8% backfield carry share, which is not a great number. And if they're going to run fewer plays, you're not going to like that. But this game that they have on Monday night, right? It's Monday night against the Falcons. That game sets up to be a lot more like the games we saw previously, in which Corum was getting more like 45% of the running back carries. It sets up as a game where they can ride the running game a little bit, assuming they're able to kind of shut down this Falcons offense, like we would think they should be able to do with the quality of their defense. And so, yeah, I was wary of Blake Corum last week, and it ended up working out because he got into the end zone. It is what it is, right? It works out. I am not wary of him this week if he's still available, because I just think this sets up a lot more like a matchup where you would expect him to get a much larger share of the carries, even if the overall pie of carries available, the number of plays they run is lower. You would expect him to get a larger share of that pie.
Yeah, and I think also with Devontae out, they've been kind of Devontae is almost like the goal line back for them. It's just Stafford throwing a fade to, or like a little quick out route for Devontae in the end zone from like 3 yards. And without that available, it seems like they were turning to the run game more. They did that weird little screen to Puka, but it didn't seem like the most comfortable play. So I think that we might see more just total goal line carries split between the two backs. So that could help Corum. But the problem with the Rams running backs is that they're getting targets at like a historically low rate or something. It's like they're lowest. I think they're last in the league. And it's even like one of the lowest rates we've seen in the last 5 years as far as how much Stafford is throwing to running backs, which is pretty crazy, beating the old quarterback dumping off allegations. And so that kind of limits Blake Corum's floor, because he's not going to catch like 4 passes and a half PPR type situation. And so you are looking for a touchdown. It could be tough if not. I think some of the other guys we talked about, Emmanuel Wilson, you said if he's available, I think he'd probably be my number one, though, if unless we see some total change with Josh Jacobs. But it seemed like he really was pretty limited, and it's nothing that's going to just heal quickly. And I think Emmanuel Wilson looked pretty good, and they're probably going to have to commit to the run.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Wilson ended up playing 5 more snaps than Josh Jacobs in that game on Saturday night. It's not a great matchup against the Ravens. It is, again, they're playing on Saturday again. And so it's not like Love has extra time to get through the concussion protocol. So I think we're heading into this. By the way, you mentioned Devontae Adams. I just wanted to put this out there because I was going to talk about Kanata Mumfield as like somebody that you could like, but Sean McVay is not. We saw that report last week that it seemed like Devontae Adams wasn't going to play this week. And Sean McVay came out on Monday and said it didn't rule it out. I suspect we're not going to see Devontae Adams, which is something to keep in mind, because I think your point about are these touchdowns really that available for Blake Corum if Adams plays? I think that's a fair point. So just something to watch throughout the week. We'll see kind of how that goes. But to your point about Wilson, like I said, Josh Jacobs, he played more snaps than Josh Jacobs. And if Love doesn't clear the concussion protocol and we end up with Malik Willis at quarterback, Malik Willis has his own injury issue. We'll see. I believe LaFleur said he was really sore with the shoulder.
Yeah.
I assume he would play if Love didn't play, but we're there. But if Willis is playing, we know they're going to lean into the run game. We saw that last year when he was playing, that they're going to lean into the run game. Last year, actually, the Packers were dead last in neutral pass rate. And part of that was from the games they had with Willis. And part of that was because Love was injured for a large part of the year, even when he was playing. And so they were dead last in neutral pass rate. I think we could see something very similar if Willis starts in this game, which is going to mean a lot of running back carries. And even if Jacobs is getting 60% of them, that could leave a bunch available for Wilson. So I agree with you for sure. I'm much more interested in Michael Carter, though. I just feel very confident now with his role. He did not have as big of a split as he did the week before, and we saw Corey Kiner also kind of get involved, but he still led the backfield in snaps. He had 30. He still led the backfield in routes. He had 17. They're going up against the Bengals, which is still an absolute smash spot against that defense. I actually feel pretty good about Michael Carter this week. I feel a lot more comfortable with him this week than I did last week, because now we have 2 games in a row. It's not that, like, last week we're like, well, was DeMarcado just not involved in the game plan? You know, was that the issue? DeMarcado was more involved. DeMarcado played, I think, 17 snaps. He was more involved, right? But we still saw Carter be that guy, and I feel really good about Carter. He has a great matchup, so I feel really good about that spot if Michael Carter is still available in your league. About the same roster percentage as Wilson. And I mean, Chris Rodriguez thing, like, the Cowboys defense, run defense, it wasn't that great this past week, but they were without Quinton Williams. Quinton Williams is coming back. Like, we know Rodriguez is the guy, but is Josh Johnson starting? Is Mariota starting? Like, there's lots of concerns. I do want to get your thoughts on Jordan a little bit, because I'm interested in that whole situation, because obviously we saw Jordan come out and have his 100-yard game the week before. Nick Chubb was active in this game, but Jordan, you know, led the backfield, had 15 carries. What I will say, he did play just 8 more snaps than Chubb, so it wasn't as wide a split as it would look with the carries. Ogunwale was available, was like involved as well. And then, like, I just kind of think Woody Marks is going to play. It's a really bad matchup against the Chargers for the Texans, and the offense didn't look great this past week against the Raiders. I don't know what the ceiling is for Jordan. Like, I don't know what it is, and so, like, I'm not really that excited about it, even if the apex thing for Jordan is that Mark sits out another week. But even if that happens, I just don't think I would be comfortable starting him. So I'm probably lower on Jordan than most people will be.
Yeah, so I think if Woody Marks were to play, I think then there's no way, right? Because I think, well, like all the things you said, the Texans D, even Darren and Chubb will get a few carries. So that would basically just ruin all of Jordan's value. But I do think if Jordan were to get the reins again this week, he might even get an increased rush share. I think that Chubb was in there a lot for like the more veteran presence type things. He had basically that 1 first down at the end of the game and like some pass pro reps, but maybe, you know, with he looks totally washed, unfortunately. And so maybe with another week of this Jordan, he is a rookie, right? Was he a 6th round pick? Or?
I genuinely don't know, which for me to not know about a young player is, I'm going to talk about a young player I've had a dynasty crush on later. And like, I normally go pretty deep on these guys, and I can't remember on Jordan.
Yeah, because I was just assuming, he's a rookie, so it must be. But I was like, maybe he's not actually. But I guess that goes to show his irrelevance. But I just think when I watched him, he passed the eye test, and Houston the defense didn't look quite as stout last week, and weird things happen at this time of year. I know we always are trying to evaluate defenses, but I think that, coming down to the end of the season, playoffs on the line, if you're going to end up getting a young, explosive player who will get 15 targets, I thought he looked pretty explosive, certainly a lot more than Nick Chubb. And so I just think there's a good chance. And I think I would take him over somebody who's, like locked in for 8 to 12 attempts and not a lot of red zone potential.
Producer Matt is hitting us that Jordan was a 2024 draft pick, 6th round.
6th round. Okay. I knew he was a 6th rounder, but okay. So it's still a young guy, definitely a lot younger than Chubb. They're like 100 years old each.
It hurts me because, like, I was out on Chubb in the preseason. Like, I drafted a lot of Dameon Pierce, which that worked out great. Good job, Summerlin. But like, I was out on Chubb just because, like, it is where we are. It makes me so sad to have to be, because Chubb in his prime before that injury was just the best running. I miss old Chubb. That's an interesting sentence. We'll move on from that very, very, very quickly. I do talk about Nick Chubb's old team, Browns. The Browns obviously lost Judkins. It's a very serious injury. He's going to miss the rest of the season. There's no obviously question about that. But like, you look at the rest of the backfield, Dylan Sampson didn't play. He didn't even practice last week because of his hand injury. They have Raheem Sanders. They have Travion Williams. There's a dynasty crush from many, many years ago in Travion Williams. But like, there's a 34.5 point total in this game. Like, they're playing the Steelers. The Steelers shut down the Lions running game. Took Derrick Henry 25 carries, get 94 yards against the Steelers defense. I can't see a path to playing one of these Browns running backs in a fantasy Super Bowl. Like, I can't see you feeling comfortable. Like, maybe Sampson, if he comes back, because he has the receiving upside. Yeah. But that's pretty much the only path I really see here, other than a random, unprojectable touchdown.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's perfect because I think we started the year with him as the
We did, yeah.
week one waiver guy, and now we're ending the year talking about him, which is just a perfect example of how these waiver things, the term league winner is thrown around way too often when you end up just still wondering if you should add him 18 weeks later. But yeah, I think the only way he could really be a league winner is to have that type of performance he had in week one. He had caught 8 passes, scored 17.3 when Judkins was out week one. But obviously a lot's changed, and the Steelers shut down Gibbs relatively well last week. And so
like Gibbs did have, like, to your point, Gibbs had a massive receiving day. And so, like, that's the path. But again, Samson didn't even practice last week. So, like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So if Samson's out, then you have Raheem Rocket Sanders, and I mean, he wasn't even on the team to start the year, right? He was the one who got drafted by the Cowboys and then immediately.
Again, I don't remember.
He's a dynasty crush. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
he was. I know a lot of people did really like him coming out of school. I know that.
Yeah, I think it's just because his nickname is Rocket, but he's actually not even that fast, which is funny.
It's a good one.
But yeah, so I think he's probably not going to factor in that much. And I do think that Samson, especially since the season, it's a lost season, basically, Samson was a 4th-round pick. It would be good for them to get him going a bit, get some chemistry, some pass pro reps. So I do think that if he plays, even though he's coming off an injury, they probably actually would give him a lot of work. But yeah, it's so risky. And the last thing you want to do is be watching your fantasy football championship go down because the Browns backup running back is losing to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel great. I can't imagine we're chasing it, but it is what it is. I will tell you, this is going to be the last waiver show we do for the season. Obviously, most people do not play in week 18. And if you are playing week 18, stop that. Don't do that. There's no reason for you to go into what will be, man, next week with how many things will be decided by next week in week 18 it's going to be really fun to try to figure out, who's playing and who has motivation. So that's going to be a great time. But even though we're not going to continue this episode, the other episodes of the Sharp Football Analysis podcast are going to continue on. We'll have still our Friday preview. Rich and I will continue to do the Thursday preview, even into the playoffs as we talk about. There'll be lots of other stuff going on as we get closer to the Super Bowl. So make sure you subscribe wherever you find us. Your podcast player of choice over on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit that notification button. Make sure you get notified whenever we drop something new, a new video, a new short, things like that. And also, I just want to point out that Friday show gives out a lot of free bets. Ryan McChrystal is going to be talking about bowl season the rest of the way. We got Rich Rebar talking about props, Joe Gibbs talking about ref stuff, obviously Warren Sharp giving out his favorite play of the week. A lot available on that Friday show. So make sure you subscribe and listen. All right, let's get to where I think most teams, if you're still alive right now, if you have waiver decisions to make, I assume they will be around quarterbacks and tight ends. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about like some streaming options here. Let's get started with the quarterbacks. This is a weird week for quarterbacks because we have two teams that are playing on Thursday in the Commanders and the Vikings that have great matchups going. They're at home. Commanders are at home against the Cowboys. The Vikings are at home against the Lions. Those are the two secondaries and the two pass defenses that at this point of the year you are most interested in attacking. And so you would say, all right, JJ McCarthy, we're in, right? Marcus Mariota, we're in. Both of them leave this past week with hand injuries. We don't know the status of either of them. I know that McCarthy did not have a broken bone in his hand, but he's getting an MRI. We don't really know that much about Mariota, who also, I believe, has a quad injury. He didn't practice on Monday. We do know that as of recording. And so it's really tough because I'm not going to start Matt Crosmer and I'm not going to start Josh Johnson. Like, I'm not going to dig that deep. But if one of these guys were to play, especially I think McCarthy were to play, then I'd be really, really interested in them as a streaming option. So it's a really tough situation.
Yeah. It was looking like if you were somebody that streamed quarterback all year, that the last week would be pretty easy. You kind of just have your pick of the litter. And then, it feels like the Detroit Lions referee situation, just, all these great matchups. However, we lose 8 quarterbacks in 1 week, basically. And now it's like, you have to be looking for, do I start Yeah, it's a bunch of third stringers, right? Like,
Yeah,
is
exactly.
Josh Johnson going to find your lineup? Probably not. But
Tyler
I
Huntley.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I like. Yeah, I would like McCarthy. He did have a hand wrapped up after in like when they were doing the post game stuff, but then he was clapping with the broken hand. So I agree with you. It's probably not broken, but
Well,
it
they
does.
said they had an X-ray and it wasn't broken, but they're running further tests. So what does that mean? Like, it's really, it's still very, as the time we're recording this, and again, we record this on Monday, it's pretty nebulous what's going on there.
Yeah, yeah. I think they would want to play him, right? Like, it's kind of a disaster if he doesn't play. Like all the Vikings have to do right now for the next 2 games is see if there's something in JJ McCarthy, and I think it would be a pretty bad look for the organization if he ended up getting pulled for these last 2 games to play Brosmer. So I think that he will probably play. The issue is that if he's not totally ready and this hand is lingering at all, I think it could really affect him. He's already been in the media a lot recently. Like people have been talking about his mechanics being subpar, and he's got to just play by feel, and it just feels like a recipe for disaster, despite a good matchup if he is nursing an injury. But it could just end up being a bruise, and I think you're right. It would probably be the best matchup. Mariota's a little bit of a better mix, I think, between safety and a good matchup. He's had 3 QB1 performances, and yeah, they can actually move the ball a bit, right? Mariota he's a competent backup. We've seen him this year have a lot of really good drives, hit some good throws. And so if he's able to play, I think against the Cowboys, a division rivalry, when they're already out, it is the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That could be a pretty good matchup. I could see him having 3 touchdowns. And so that's probably where I would lean, mix of safety and high ceiling.
My concern with Mariota is that a lot of what he's been doing as a fantasy player is reliant on rushing.
Yeah.
And the 2 starts before this past week, he had 10 carries in each of those. In fact, I was high on his rushing total this week. I took the over on his prop. Even before the injury, he wasn't going to hit it. Now he's hurt. Is he going to run as much? Like, that's a big concern here. He does obviously, though, have the weapons. JJ McCarthy obviously has weapons as well. And Justin Jefferson, if he ever completes fast to them. And, and Jordan Addison. But like, Mariota does have weapons as well, and a healthy Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, and so like he's in a good spot there as well. But I just worry a lot more. I think of Mariota's fantasy value is tied up in running, and if he has that hand injury, are we going to get as much running? That would be my concern with that. But they're honestly really in a very similar spot. The one thing I would say is that I'm going to like the potential game environment in Cowboys Commanders a lot better than I am in Lions Vikings, because the Lions can certainly push it and score a lot of points. We saw that not work out this past week. The Vikings defense is very, very good. In fact, the total in that game is 44.5, which isn't terrible, but it's certainly not elite. The total in that Cowboys and Commanders game, I believe, is 50.5. So it's a lot better game environment for Mariota.
Yeah.
But maybe that leans you towards using him. The guy that I would use over both of these guys, especially with the injury concerns, is Tyler Shuck. I am all in on Tyler Shuck going up against the Titans. The Titans did shut down the Chiefs, right? But like, as we kind of talked about, the Chiefs looked like they were on the beach. Like they're done. The Chiefs really were done in that situation. Lost their backup quarterback, who's now on IR, although he didn't tear his ACL, but he is on IR. So hope you get well soon, Gardner Minshew. But like, I'm not taking a lot out of that. Prior to that, the Titans were getting absolutely shredded. Shuck is the quarterback 8 over the last 3 weeks. He's 3rd in rushing yards over that span with 2 rushing scores. I will say, the Taysom Hill thing, we'll talk about Taysom Hill here in a bit when we get to the tight ends. The Taysom Hill thing does raise concerns. Definitely his lowest rushing production of this run was this past week. And if Taysom Hill's heavily involved, we get less Shuck running, especially near the end zone. Like, that could be a concern. But like, more importantly than that, because the Saints did not have a running back they trusted, which is why we saw Taysom Hill out there, we saw the Saints be 13% over expected pass rate. They threw the ball a ton, even in a game they were controlling, because they didn't have a running back they trusted. If Kamara comes back, that'll probably change, right? But as long as Kamara stays out, I think we're going to get a lot of dropbacks here for Shuck against this Titans defense, and I feel really, really good about him. And so if I'm picking guys, even if McCarthy and Mariota were like healthy, I still think I would have Shuck ranked above them. And then Shuck, we don't have those concerns with the injury. So he is, I think, number 1 with the bullet of the streaming options this week.
Yeah, he looks awesome. I think there's not really too much that needs to be said. Like he is, I think, more mobile than anybody really realized. They're running a lot of plays. He's passing well. I think the team as a whole looks pretty good. The vibes are good. It just seems like all they have really to play for is to, end the season strong. They could move ahead of the Falcons in the division. They could even they have 5 wins now. Bucks have 7. So I feel like this could really turn into them kind of establish themselves in the way like the Lions 3 years ago, when they went on that hot streak at the end of the year. Like, I think that stuff matters a lot. So I think they're going to keep pushing it. Kellen Moore likes to run a lot of plays, and they need to see what they have. Everybody kind of roasted them preseason for spending a second-round pick on a geriatric rookie quarterback, 26-year-old Tyler Shook. But
I made the jokes. I'm not going to say I didn't.
Yeah, no, I think this is what you get. Like, this is the flip side, that they come into the league a lot more prepared, a lot more ready to go. And so it's not like they're going to be tanking for a pick, right? I think they're going to stick with Shuck until next year at the very least. And so, yeah, I think it's a great streamer this week. My concern, one random thing. So you talked about Taysom Hill. If Alvin Kamara comes back, do you think he's going to get some sort of Taysom Hill farewell tour? Because it really seemed like they were giving Taysom Hill the game so he could get this 3,000-yard categories and have the press conference after. And my concern is if Alvin Kamara does come back, that they're going to basically just give him 30 touches or something, and then he's going to ride off into the sunset.
I want to talk about Malik Willis for just a second, and then we'll come. But I'm going to go to Taysom Hill now. But we need to come back to Malik Willis, so we'll get back to him in just a second. The thing about Taysom Hill, and we're kind of moving into tight ends now, tight end streaming options. The thing about him is, if you look at his usage, I think it's pretty clear that he's going to get used when they do not have a running back they trust. So Kamara gets hurt. Kamara gets hurt in that game, and they don't, I guess, know how they feel about Devin Neal. And so we saw Taysom Hill get a lot of work in that game. He had 12 carries, I think, in the game that Kamara gets hurt. Devin Neal comes out. I guess they trust him, and we see Taysom Hill completely disappear from the game plan. Then Devin Neal is out, and all of a sudden we get another big Taysom Hill game. And if I look at that and just kind of like connecting dots here, maybe I'm connecting dots that don't exist, but it suggests to me that the Taysom Hill usage is tied to, do they have a running back that they trust?
Yeah.
So if Kamara comes back, I actually think that we see Taysom Hill just completely disappear again from the game plan. I don't think they're going to risk the development of their young quarterback and finding out, because they're going to have a high pick again, right? Finding out if they have their quarterback they want to build around, or if they need to go and try to get involved in, whatever. They're not going to be involved in Mendoza, but like however they want to, get involved in the quarterback. There are going to be a lot of formerly highly rated quarterbacks in this draft that are no longer as highly rated. And so there will be some guys slipping. And so we'll see kind of where that goes. But I don't think they're going to like give up developmental opportunities for Shuck. And so I think it much more is about, can we use Taysom Hill in fantasy or not? If Kamara comes back, I don't think we can use Taysom Hill even as a tight end. If Kamara is still out, then Taysom Hill is an absolute smash tight end one, based on what we've seen whenever they have a running back situation that they can't really trust. And it seems like that's where we are, as we talked about last week, where we said you don't want to chase after Estime or Evan Hull, because they were having those guys split snaps even after Neal left the game, and that they very clearly did not feel comfortable with both of those guys as like the lead guy, even though Estime did get more work this week. And so that's where I stand with Taysom Hill. Maybe I'm connecting dots that don't exist, but I think that it's much more about, can you play Hill at tight end or not? Kamara coming back is much more about, can you play Hill at tight end or not, than anything to Shuck. But that's kind of the way I'm viewing it.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think if you are someone who's considering playing Taysom Hill, you should just do it, because how legendary is that? If you are able to play Taysom Hill in your championship and win, kudos to you. I think I've seen it's crazy. Like when he was doing that presser afterwards, it's like, it's been 10 years of my life now, basically, watching Taysom Hill have one amazing game a year. And then I can think back to so many times where I started him and had the occasional great day, and then usually just disappointed me. And I feel like everybody has that with him. And So I would be a little too gun shy since he just had the good game that he'll do it twice. But if somebody out there is willing to spot start Taysom Hill in the championship, I think that's the most legendary way you can win your league.
I think that's 100% fair. Like, just being gun shy in your championship is 100% fair. And maybe you don't need to chase tight ends because you've been doing fine with whomever you have. But I will say, when I just go back again, I'm just going to say it again. When you go back and look at the circumstances of Taysom Hill usage this year, his usage against the Jets makes a lot of sense based on kind of that. And so if Kamara stays out, I think that his usage against the Titans will be much closer to what it was against the Jets than it was the 3 weeks prior to that. And so that's where we stand with Hill. I did want to go back real quick to that Ravens Packers game from a quarterback perspective, because we don't know who's playing. I kind of assumed that Lamar Jackson's going to try to gut it out. They still have some hope of the playoffs. We'll see kind of where that ends up. And then Tyler Huntley, are you really going to chase that situation? I don't know. I have much less faith that we're going to see Jordan Love, which makes, I think, Malik Willis very interesting, just based on what we see from this offense whenever he's running it. Last year in his 2 starts, he averaged 57 rushing yards. He was a quarterback 10 over those 2 weeks. He was a quarterback 2 in rushing fantasy points per game. It's not a great matchup or anything against this Ravens defense, but if you're desperate, absolutely desperate in a deep league for a quarterback, and Jordan Love misses this game, there is a path for Malik Willis to have a viable, option. If there are 2 quarterback leagues, for sure, there's a path here for Malik Willis to be a viable 2 QB option. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. I think I feel reasonably good about Malik Willis just because of that rushing upside. Any pushback on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think he had 10 carries for 44 after Jordan Love went out. It's a little bit of a skewed stat, right? Because they did have overtime. So it feels like it was, it actually was basically a prorated full game. But I think that he is going to be somebody who's a pretty high floor. The problem is, I just think that this game will be insanely slow. You mentioned before, Packers led the league in neutral script rush rate last year, and that was because Jordan Love was injured or Malik Willis was in. I would imagine it's super run heavy this time. I think with Tyler Huntley, it's going to be super run heavy on the Ravens side, even though they seem to refuse to run the ball with Derrick Henry. But I think you're going to basically just see a really run heavy, not a lot of plays, and it could end up being a situation where just neither offense runs enough plays to really get that much. But what time? When is that game?
It's Saturday evening.
Oh yeah, Saturday evening. Okay, yeah, it's tough because it's one of those things where if you're streaming a QB and it was a Sunday game or something, maybe you could wait, see if you get a lead, or if you need to embrace more variance. But I think going Saturday evening, it's kind of a soft play, to be honest. I don't really see a situation where he ends up going for 30 points or something, but I do think he's probably a lock to go for at least 12 to 15.
And I think that's a fair point with Mariota and McCarthy too, is if they're active, but you're worried about, are they going to leave the game? And then you're playing catch up in your matchup. You don't know if you need to chase that variance or not, because they play in the first 2 games of the week on Christmas. By the way, the Christmas games at one point in time look really good.
Yeah.
And now they look awful. And I was actually looking at the totals. And so the last Christmas game is Denver, Kansas City, which is on Prime Video. And that's got a 36.5 point total. The 2 Saturday games are Texans, Chargers, and Ravens, Packers. And those have a 39.5 point total and a 40.5 point total. So not ideal. Not what the NFL was hoping for, I don't think, when they scheduled those matchups to begin with. But we'll get there. I do want to go over some more tight ends here. We already mentioned Taysom Hill. Anybody else? Any other widely available guys stand out to you as somebody you're interested in streaming this week?
Yeah, I think if you're streaming, especially if you're streaming the last week of the year, with tight ends, it's basically about what's the chance that they fall into the end zone, right? So a lot of times, early in the year, we're looking for a lot more targets, route run type of peripheral metrics to see who might end up being really involved, so we can find a Harold Fannin type later in the season. But I think this 1 week, you kind of throw that out the window and you just say who is most likely to get in the end zone. So it's tough because it's you have Quinn Ewers throwing to Darren Waller, which sounds like a nightmare, but Darren Waller's got 6 touchdowns on 23 receptions this year. So it's like if he gets 3 targets, I feel like that alone is enough of a chance that he ends up getting the end zone. But I think it'd be pretty tough watch. So maybe Brenton Strange seems like the better option for actually, somebody who's going to hopefully be involved in the offense. A lot of mouths to feed there, though, and I think that there's a chance any week like 2 of those guys get left out. But just from the eye test, it seemed like Lawrence was really looking at Strange a lot last week, and Strange is coming off that injury, so he's getting more and more involved every week. I think I'd probably go with him, but I know your guy, so I'll tee it up to you. Who would you go with?
Yeah, I actually have a guy I like over both of them, but I'll get to him in a second. The thing with Strange, and you said it, is that we just don't know. The good part about it is the Jaguars have been very pass heavy the last 2 games, super pass heavy, 8% over expected. And I expect Strange and Parker Washington will be very popular on the waiver wire this week. Of the Jaguars made anybody who doubted them, including myself, look like fools against the Jaguars. This passing game is clicking. It looks great. Liam Cohen deserves a bunch of credit. He deserves Coach of the Year buzz for sure. Like this is all. This has been a really outstanding turnaround from the questions we had about Trevor Lawrence earlier in the season. And so I eat as much crow as I need to. Like everything looked great, but there are 4 mouths to feed in this passing game. They're going up against the Colts, who we don't know how good that offense is going to be. We haven't seen how they're going to perform on Monday night, because again, we record this before they play the 49ers. And the other thing about Strange is that he hasn't been a big touchdown guy. He does have 2 touchdowns in the last 4 games. Those are only 2 end zone targets this year that he's had. So like I don't know about Strange. I think if I was ranking Waller and Strange, I would have Waller ahead of him just because of that touchdown thing. And Waller looked awesome in that game. They didn't throw enough, but like Waller looked like he was just dominating dudes out there on the catches that he had. There was that 3rd down catch where he just like mossed a guy, like just like had the ball over his head, like you're not gonna catch it. The thing about Waller though is we just don't know how much the Dolphins are gonna throw, and like they got blown out in that game. It was close in the first half, to be fair. They got blown out in the game, but Ewers threw 30 times. Like that's all that they threw. So even if they get blown out by the Bucs, does it look there? That's been the Waller's problem ever since he's come back, is the underlying numbers look great, but they're not throwing enough. So that's my thoughts on Waller and Strange. I like AJ Barner a lot better than those 2 guys. And there's a couple things at play here. First of all, Elijah Arroyo is on injured reserve. He's not going to come back in the regular season. And since Arroyo has left, Barner's been running a ton of routes. He's got an 86.8% route rate over the last 2 weeks, 12 targets over that span. So he's getting a lot of work. And he's also been, again, he got another touchdown. He's been heavily involved as a scorer for this offense. And the Panthers have actually been better against tight ends as of late, but it's not like they've really been like playing a bunch of guys. And if you look at their overall season, they are 3rd in yards per target allowed to tight ends this season. So I am, if Taysom Hill for some reason isn't available at tight end for you, or if Kamara plays, Barner's the guy that I'm really looking at. Can I go out an honorable mention here? The Rams guys are there as well, but we need to see what happens with Devontae Adams. Can I give an honorable mention here of Luke Musgrave, because John Fitzpatrick was just put on injured reserve. The concern we've had with Musgrave, aside from are the Packers going to throw enough, which that's a massive concern, right? But let's say Jordan Love plays. The concern we've had with Musgrave is that he's been running routes, sharing routes with Fitzpatrick. Do we get like a more full-time Luke Musgrave? So that's something to watch as well as a wild card for you.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with the AJ Barner thing, but I don't want to steal it from you. Ever since Arroyo went out, he's really involved. He's like a lock for 4 to 5 targets, right? So he's been just kind of not running hot in the touchdown category until this last week. And so I think that he's got as good of a shot as anybody to find the end zone. And if he gets 5 targets, 6 targets, that's pretty good shot. Plus he goes in on those tush pushes, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So I think overall he just got a lot more ways to be solid, and probably a little bit of a higher floor. He's probably not going to give you a goose egg or something like other tight ends always have a chance to do. I think AJ Barner's a more consistently involved in this offense.
How about some, we normally do deep cuts, and when we're doing deep cuts, it's all about looking ahead. This guy's probably more involved than you think. We'll see what happens. Obviously, we don't care about this week, right? So if we're doing deep cuts, this is more of like what Rich and I do on Thursdays with Uncut Gems. Who's a guy that you're like, if you're in a really deep league and you're desperate, this guy's probably available, and maybe he has a shot to do something this week. You got anybody?
Yeah, well, he was my deep cut, but I just got an Adam Schefter tweet which upgraded him to regular cut. Adam Thielen was my deep cut because DK Metcalf has been suspended for 2 games.
Wow,
not too surprising, but maybe we had some uncertainty about if it would happen right away and stuff. So I don't really know who else. I think Kenneth Gainwell leads the team in receptions. So I know they split the tight ends, but
we actually I just checked my messages, and Rich Rebar put in the Slack that it's Kenneth Gainwell wide receiver 1 season. And so
absolutely.
We might see if Kenneth Gainwell's available in your league. He's obviously not available in enough leagues for us to talk about it, but go check. Might as well look at it. We'll see.
Yeah. So if for some reason, Kenneth Gainwell is exhausted from running in 50-yard untouched touchdowns, somebody's got to catch the ball besides him. So I think, Adam Thielen looked like he was getting a bit of a good rapport with Rodgers on the sideline. They were, I saw they were like game scripting a lot of things, and it seemed like that veteran presence maybe gearing up for the playoffs. I could see Rodgers trying to get that more involved. He looked to him on a pretty crucial first down. So without DK, any chance you'd be interested in Thielen?
I don't know, brother. but that is where we are, right? He was up to a 40% route rate, so that you feel certainly better about that. Like you said, at 4 targets, and so got more involved, and they have to throw to somebody, right? Like that's kind of where we are at this point. So yeah, I understand it, and I can't say anything about it because I'm about to throw out a worse name for sure. And I'm going to say Saints wide receiver Kevin Austin, as we talked about with Tyler Shuck, how pass heavy they were with a running back they didn't trust. I think they're going to be pass heavy again, assuming again Kamara remains out. We'll have to see what happens. But I like this passing game a lot against the Titans, so I want to take some shots on secondary options. Mason Tipton is going to be the name I think brought up as deep league guys because he got 5 targets, but he ran way fewer routes than Kevin Austin did in that game. Kevin Austin he was an 87% route rate. Tipton was more around like 50%. Austin also got targets. He ended up with 3 targets in the game. So it's not like he wasn't involved at all. To be fair, I have long been an Austin fanboy. He has long been one of my dynasty crushes. So it's very possible that this is all bias, right? But if we expect the Saints to throw a lot, I think he is their number 2 wide receiver right now. The Titans have given up the 2nd most yards per target to wide receivers this season. There's a lot there for Kevin Austin. If you're just really desperate, you're in a deep league, or let's be honest, more likely, you're searching for cheap, minimum priced DFS plays this week, Kevin Austin is somebody that I'm going to be paying attention to. So you can tell me why that's dumb as we trade for the last thing we talk about this year, Adam Thielen and Kevin Austin.
Well, you couldn't get any Jets in this episode, so you had to bring up 3
I thought about Isaiah Williams. Like, are we gonna?
I mean, Austin also he had a relatively good game 2 weeks ago, right? He had I think 3 for 5 or 5 targets, 3 receptions. So he's definitely involved. And if the Titans can keep the ball moving like they have been, I could see this being a relatively high scoring game, pass friendly. I don't think it's the craziest thing. Like you said, it's a much better DraftKings free square than it is a championship roster move. But some people have multiple flexes. I mean, I'm in the situation, my team's relatively good, but it's like I still, Igbuka is not doing anything. Brian Thomas, you can't trust. Like there's players that you might just think, why not take a shot with a guy off the waiver wire? Sort of a cultural divide between people that want to stick with the people that got them there and people who want to play matchups in week 17. So I don't think it's that crazy. And 5 targets 2 weeks ago is enough to maybe hang your hat on.
I do think it's crazy, but we're digging deep. That's what we're here to dig deep and try to give some options. All right, that's it for us. That's it for us for the season, Freeman. This has been a blast. It's been a fun time. I've mentioned a bunch of times how much I love FAABLab and have used FAABLab, so it was great. We got to connect on this. Hopefully, we can keep this going moving forward. If you don't know about FAABLab, bookmark it so you have it available for next year. FAABLab's the best way to get ready for setting bids for the week. Freeman is the mastermind behind that. He's also does stuff preseason with like auction values and stuff like that. So make sure you bookmark FAABLab and check it out. But yeah, man, it's been fun. It's been good.
Yeah, it's been great. I've got a lot of things planned for next year too. So usually my season is already over by now, so I have a little bit of a shorter window to do development. But I do think next year we'll have a lot more good features, and so appreciate it. And yeah, always love Sharp Football's work as well. So I'm gonna be riding the postseason props and getting your weekly picks bowl season as well. But I think as far as last minute FAAB advice, go out there and pick up the guys that have been loyal to you for 10 years. I've been, for example, a Miles Sanders fan his whole career. And now I'm in the championship. And the least I can do is add him to the bottom of the roster. So
you want to get him a ring, huh? You want to get him a ring?
Yeah, exactly. Go out there and find the guys that have been with you when you were 2-12.
Yeah, pick up Rashad Penny.
Exactly. Yeah, Rashad Penny's perfect.
Get him a ring. Get him a ring. I love it. All right, that's it for us. Like I said, this is going to be our last one of our waiver podcasts. But we have a lot more on the podcast feed coming out through the playoffs. So make sure you subscribe wherever you find us. And we'll be back to talk with you real soon.